On today's Locked On Bama, we're going to talk about three very intriguing players that are intriguing for three very different reasons.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Thank you for making us your first listen. Jimmy, let's just jump right into your countdown. Today, we come up on a guy who is making everybody at Alabama very excited, even though he didn't do a ton last year, and that's Isiah Bond, number 17 in your program, number 1 in your heart. And, you know, one thing that I think about him going back to his first big play, I guess, at Alabama was the catch against Arkansas where he didn't score, but he was wide open. And I think it was Bryce that threw that ball, and it wasn't perfect, but it reminded me so much. And Alabama fans who watched the 2018 Louisville game will remember this may have been Jalen Waddle's first catch. I don't think it was, though. It was one of his first catches against Louisville from Tua. Jalen's wide open. Tua overthrows him just a hair, and Waddle has to go up and get it and come down with it. Should have been a touchdown, but it was the eerily similar. Like Bryce's pass to Bond should have been a touchdown against Arkansas too, and they both wear number 17. I don't know why I feel like that's a big deal. It's probably not a big deal. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, Bond played right off the bat. I mean, pretty highly recruited kid. Super fast. Interesting. I think you would lead off Bond, right? We're talking about Isiah. He's probably the fastest player on the team. There's a handful of contenders for that. I think Bond, Malik Benson's very fast. Jalen Milroe is very fast. He would be a strong contender, actually. But Bond is probably who I'd pick as the guy that's probably the fastest guy on the whole team, which is saying a lot because team speed is outstanding. But Bond can really, really run. And he played as a true freshman, and he made a few plays. Off the top of my head, I think he wears number 17, and I think he caught 17 balls. I mean, I haven't looked at that in a couple of weeks, but he caught somewhere around 14, 17 balls a year ago, which means he made a contribution. He played with the first team. He's certainly going to play with the first team again this fall. I think the question is, can he lead this wide receiver room in receptions? That would be a big shock based on the jump it would take from where he was last year to this year. But I think he can be one of the leading receivers. I think he can be as high as maybe third and maybe as low as maybe fifth. And there'll be 6 or 7 guys that play in that first team rotation. But Bond's going to be out there first quarter, first game. I mean, this is a guy you'll regularly see every Saturday, and he's expected to make that year 1 to year 2 jump. I think any negative I would just have is, he is fast. I'm not sure last year he played to his speed. And what I mean by that is, I think if you watch the games last year, other than the play that Luke pointed out and maybe a couple of others, at no point did you see his 4.3 speed evidence itself on the field in terms of separation in his routes, in terms of making a big play, running away from the defense. It only happened, a couple of times. I think the challenge for him is, hey, you're the fastest guy out there. Show it, just show that it translates to the football and not just the track, right? So I think that's a challenge for Bond, but we have every reason to be very excited about him. I know that a lot of people think, oh, the receivers, it's never going to be again like it was with Smitty and Jalen and Waddle and Ruggs, all those guys. Well, there's a chance, Luke, Isiah Bond may be a first-round pick. He can be a first-round pick because he has first-round pick tools. So let's see if it works out. It's just something that obviously isn't going to happen overnight.
It really is kind of like having a Maserati, but you can only drive it in subdivisions right now. You got to get him on the Autobahn. You got to get, and I guess now that I think about it, that's one thing that sort of frustrates you about Bill O'Brien from last year. And I say you, I'm meaning you, all Alabama fans. like, why didn't we just have more deep balls to him? Just let him go. Just turn him loose. I mean, maybe there was a scheme. Maybe there was a reason. I know he lost a fumble last year. That's not a big deal. But you look at the end of the season, I think those are when his best games really came around. He scored a touchdown against Kansas State. He had 4 catches, only 36 yards against Auburn. Why wasn't he allowed to cut loose one time against Auburn?
Right.
I mean, just cut loose. Now, maybe it happened. I haven't gone back and watched all the games to see, oh, there he goes on a fly route. But I'm saying, what if he did have a fly route, we never took a shot at it. So it just feels like we have this cheetah that we have in a rather large, we have in my living room. I mean, he can't ever get going.
Right. I think it's largely my answer to that is largely it was a schematic issue in terms of how we were defended by most teams last year. I think teams sort of copycatted each other and found a way to defend us that I wouldn't say it worked because we were the 4th highest scoring team in college football, but it worked enough times. And we were basically playing a lot of teams that dropped 7 and 8 guys into coverage. They weren't worried about us pounding the ball at them. They weren't worried about Bryce running with the ball. They worried about Bryce's intermediate and downfield passes. So they dropped 7 or 8. They were covering our 3 or 4 receivers with 7 and 8 guys, including 2 deep safeties, and just sort of trying to take away that part of the game as best they could. And we worked around it to the point that we were very productive in terms of points and yards. But it did work to some extent. Obviously, we lost a couple games. A couple other games were close. That's how teams chose to defend us. It's an extremely popular defense right now in the NFL. Alabama's not the only offense. It's a little flummoxed by that. I think a lot of what we've talked about this whole offseason about a return to run the damn ball, a return to the MTAQ Saban stuff is in part response to that. Because if you're dropping 7 or 8 and we start pounding you on the ground with physical run game, that's the worst defense to play against that type of offense. We're going to 6 and 8 yard you to death and never punt if that's how you're playing, a power ground game. So we're going to get teams out of that. The irony is by running the ball, now Bond may have more opportunities to take the top off because the safeties are up and everybody's not just dropping back.
Well, listen, you want your Isiah Bonds running well, and if you want your engine running well, then you want to go to eBay Motors. I'm telling you, eBay Motors is the place to go. You will absolutely love this place. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, you head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. That's right. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Jimmy, on the next Locked on Bama, we'll be still diving into this countdown because, we're running out of days to get this in before practice, and that's our goal every year. So, look, Nick Saban's got to slow down on the commitment taken unless it's DeMarcus Riddick, which is next Wednesday at 4 o'clock Central Time, God's time, and we'll be talking about that later. Now we come to a guy. And I didn't put up any pictures of Isiah Bond because I was being silly. There's a good one of Isiah Bond. Look at that against Utah State. So now I'm going to put up a picture of the next guy on your countdown. That is one Mr. Jermaine Burton. Every time I say Jermaine, I want to go Dupree or Jackson. I've got to learn to go Burton next. But Jermaine Burton, one of the more intriguing players. Intriguing, I don't even know if that's the word. I'll tell you. Jermaine Burton is the kind of guy that I think our fans, they haven't put their arms around him just yet. I mean, he's every time you want to start loving him. He had a couple of big catches for touchdowns in like the third game last year. I think it was third or fourth game. And then he just disappeared a little bit, had some big drops, had that little incident at Tennessee, which some people think he was justified. And I understand it. I understand, you're on the field, you've been in this hotly contested game, and somebody comes in your face and they may say something to you and you take a slap or whatever it is that he did. It wasn't super clear. I don't agree with it. I'm just saying I get it. I certainly don't condone it. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, and then he had these comments the other day where he's just talking about how good we're going to be this upcoming year. And I think the fans' reaction to most of that, at least on the message boards, was, hey, Jermaine, we need you to go out there and show us. Go out there and be this dude. Don't talk about being this dude. Be this dude.
Yeah, I think Jermaine is to some extent a victim of expectations. I don't think he necessarily was a bad player. I think it was his first year with the program after coming from Georgia, a highly recruited guy. A lot of people, and myself, I might be as guilty of this as anybody. I think we sort of labeled Jermaine Burton as wide receiver one before he got here and expected him to be our best wide receiver, sort of replace a lot of the production we were losing from Jamison Williams and John Mechie. And he didn't do that. He didn't even come close to Mechie's numbers or JMO's numbers. And I think because he didn't live up to expectations, I mean, it's sort of like a movie. I mean, movies are in the news a lot right now with we're just going through the Barbenheimer weekend, I think. And, expectations for both of those movies sky high. But the point is, when you tell yourself you're about to step into a movie and this movie is going to be great and it's only good, sometimes you leave disappointed and because you're like, oh, I thought it was going to be a lot better than that. Well, the movie was pretty good, and I think with Burton, that's the thing. He is a good player. He caught, I think, 39 balls, almost 700 yards. He had several games where he was our leading receiver. He did have drops, but he is dependable. He's not a guy that drops half the balls you throw him. I mean, I think one of the reasons we bring up the drops with him is because he was supposed to be a guy that never dropped the ball. I don't think he had a drop in his 2 years at Georgia at all, which is nuts. So when he dropped, I think 2 or 3 balls last year, Alabama fans were like, what is this? I thought he didn't drop balls. So I think to some extent it might have been expectations. One last thing I'll throw in. He seemed to, I think this term is overrated a little bit, but he seemed to not have a good chemistry with Bryce, which is crazy because Bryce is so good. But how many times did we see Jermaine Burton behind the defense and Bryce missed him? I mean, and by that, Bryce didn't throw many inaccurate balls. But if we were going to say, hey, here's the 10 most inaccurate balls Bryce threw in 2 years, 6 or 7 of the 10 would have been deep balls to Jermaine Burton. For whatever reason, they were not lock and step on some deep balls and missed. So Burton did a good job of getting open, getting separation, putting himself in position to make the big play, and the ball just wasn't catchable. So that's not on Burton either. But I'm just saying he's a good player. Maybe this year, now that the expectations are totally different, now we're like, well, Burton's not great. He's just okay. If we're going into the season with the idea that Jermaine Burton's just okay, I think he's going to surprise people. He's a better player than that.
A couple of things. First of all, I just looked it up. He didn't it wasn't that he had 2 touchdowns in the fourth game. He had 2 touchdowns in the very first game, which may have sort of blown up expectations a little bit. Now, it was against Utah State. And then he had 2 more touchdowns against Austin Peay. So, I mean, again, those were his 2 best games. He had 7 catches against Austin Peay, 5 catches against USU. He had 5 catches against Ole Miss with a touchdown. Now, that arguably was his best game, or maybe even Kansas State, where he had 3 catches for a touchdown. The other thing I want to say is, if you don't have good chemistry with Bryce Young, that's on you.
Yeah. I mean, it is a strange thing to say. It's a strange thing to say because, what do you mean? Bryce doesn't need a lot of help, But for whatever reason, he seemed to miss Burton quite a bit. Yeah. And never seemed to miss the other guys. So maybe that's on Burton. I don't know. But I just think, again, I like the movie analogy here. And when you go in thinking it's going to be great and it's only good, you're disappointed. I think this year we're going to go into the Jermaine Burton movie thinking, this will be okay. Hey, sometimes when you go to a movie, you don't really want to go because you don't really think much of it, and it's good. You're like, wow, not bad. And I think that's what we'll be saying about Jermaine Burton at the end of this season. Not bad.
I want him to be sort of John Wickish. I don't think anybody expected a lot of John Wick when it came out. Now it's something like, it's going to have all these spinoffs and everything else. It'd be great. I said just a second ago, because here's what happens. When I pull up Jermaine Burton stats on the ESPN page, and then I scroll down to look at them, an ad started playing. And I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it. And I'm like, what the heck's happening? I didn't know what that was. It was like just a little Irish Spring whistling thing or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just wanted people to know what that was in case they're just listening. They're like, why did Luke say what the? Like, what happened to him? Anywho, so Jermaine Burton, we're expecting a better year from and I did pull up his stats. He had about 40 catches, like you said, but for 677 yards. Again, I think there's more there. I think there's more to get out of him. And I think that is the thing that's not, I hate to say disappointing, but when you see him having, his own social media and he's saying this, saying that, maybe that's just the way he is, understandably. But I'm to the point of like, okay, we got to see something, and not against Utah State. I mean, the first game, if you have 2 touchdowns against Middle Tennessee, fantastic. But then I want to see you have 2 against Texas, or at least make a kick butt block. Do something against a big boy.
One thing about the expectations, what I'd say is this too, that some kids just don't get a fair break from the fans. I think if you ask Alabama fans, how excited are you about Bond? How excited are you about Prentice? How excited are you about Law, Emmanuel Henderson? I think we'd all be going, we are excited about all these guys. Can't wait to see what they do. Chances are most of them, half of them, won't end their careers with 2,000 SEC receiving yards and 20 touchdowns, and Jermaine Burton is. So that's what I mean by that. Sometimes it's just for whatever reason, players aren't appreciated. I think if we said right now, hey, do you think Prentice will be a 2,000-yard, 20 touchdown guy? We go, I hope so. He could be. Well, Burton is, and we go, let's just look at the younger guys. He's a good, productive, solid SEC player. And the incident at Tennessee, we could have spent more time on that, but that's terrible to talk about. But I think the same thing. He didn't get. Sure, there was something to criticize there. But I'm also not sure he was treated fairly either, not by everybody.
That's true. Now, here's the other thing. And we got to get to a break, so no need to respond. But I can't even watch Tennessee game highlights from last year. Like Dallas Turner, they showed the highlight of him returning that fumble for a touchdown last year against Tennessee. It makes me so mad. All I can think about is that bad PI call against Alabama last year, because we win the game if they don't have that call, and that call just changed everything. It makes me so mad, and I understand sometimes you're the victim of a bad call, so it happens. Get it. I feel you. I hear you. I'm not blaming the refs. I'm just saying I hated that call, and it just makes me sick to think we should have won it without that. Now, again, you're the victim of bad calls sometimes. It was our turn over the barrel. It happens. I'm not saying refs are terrible and they're out to get us. I don't want people to misconstrue that. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Justice Haynes, who might be the player that's least known about, at least experienced, that everybody's the most excited about. And we're back. We're going to talk a little Justice Haynes now. Going to put up a picture of him. Now, this is him just as he committed. Not a picture, because, obviously there aren't a lot of game pictures, because guess what? He hadn't played in the game. But look at that dude. If you were going up against that dude, and let's say you're in high school and you're like, okay, my coach gave me this great pregame speech. I'm super fired up. I can't wait to go out there and play Buford High School. Oh, my God, look at that running back they have. And he doesn't even have his pads on. It looks like he ate his pads with his arms. That's what it looks like.
Great picture. Shout out to either Chad Simmons or Joseph Hastings with On Three, who no doubt took that picture. That's the good stuff right there. Justice, Alabama's pretty loaded at running back, right? Jace McClellan's back, good player. Roydell Williams is back, good player. Jam Miller showed glimpses last year of maybe greatness. So you got 3 coming in, and there's no real reason to play a true freshman a lot with 2 veterans and an exciting young player like Jam Miller, but hold the phone. Justice Haynes is just too good. And I think he's one of these guys, Luke, that when we got the commitment, when Justice Haynes committed to Alabama, we knew he was good. We knew this, but he's been even better. I mean, per word from inside the program, starting with the bowl practices even. He's been even better than advertised. And the advertisements were exciting and maybe even better. I think in the end, Luke, Justice Haynes is so good, he's going to cut into Jace McClellan's carries. He's going to cut in to Roydell Williams' carries. He's going to cut into Jam Miller's carries, and he's going to end up being a big part of things. He's just too good to keep off the field. And because he's a freshman, I mean, one thing you can just assume from fan bases is, who's going to be the popular players, right? And if there's a freshman running back who's highly productive and making plays all over the place and scoring touchdowns, you can bet that guy's going to be a huge fan favorite. Now throw in the fact that Justice Haynes is a great kid from a great family. He's a Georgia legacy who chose to be at Alabama. Everything is lined up, Luke, for Justice Haynes to, I guess in this NIL world, we can say Justice Haynes is going to sell a lot of Alabama jerseys.
No mute, everybody. I swear, no mute.
No,
I just you caught me off guard once again with your
jersey. My jersey thing was good.
Your jersey sales thing just got me. It just got me.
Yeah, it's something we used to not be able to say, and now it's a thing. Right now, it's like, as a matter of fact, we probably should do a whole show on that this week. Like, it's like the NFL, right? I mean, who's going to sell the most jerseys on this team? Last year was obviously Bryce, and to some extent Will. And who's going to sell the most jerseys this year? I think it's a good topic.
I'm going to give Waddle a lot of credit right here too. If there's one jersey I didn't think would ever be something kind of sexy, it's 17. 17 just doesn't sound like a great, it's because you hear it's 17 just doesn't seem like it's not really, 18 you're old enough to vote and you're in college, you're having fun, and you're legal.
Yeah. Hey, and how about this? 17 is a weird. I'll give you an even weirder example. This might blow you. Maybe you know this. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sure most people listening don't know this. Who is wearing 17 on defense this year?
I do know this, and now I can't remember. I can't. I do know it because I remember thinking about it the other day, and I'm not going to sit here and try to think of this while people are trying to listen. So tell me.
Trez Marshall.
That's right. I saw it the other day. I was like, what a weird number for him. And then I just sort of.
Exactly. I mean, basically he's going to play Mike linebacker, maybe Will linebacker. But for a linebacker in the middle of the field to wear number 17, you almost want to holler down at the field, Coach, you put a wide receiver on the field. Coach, there's a wide receiver at linebacker. We're going to get killed.
You got people in the stands doing this, with their finger, right there.
Bond, Isiah Bond's out there.
Feverishly pointing their finger.
I just think I don't know that I've seen a linebacker. Have you seen a linebacker wear 17? That's just strange number to me. Obviously, it's a wide receiver or a safety DB. But anyway, Trez Marshall's going to wear 17 on defense. Obviously, Bond on offense. But Justice Haynes, 22, I believe.
Yeah, and what a good number for him.
He's very much like Mark Ingram. I mean, he's a lot like him, and now he's wearing his number.
Justice Haynes is. I'll tell you something else I like about this whole group coming in and the current group committed. I thought both Jamie French and William Sanders, who just committed the other day, and most of this class coming in. I hadn't heard all of them speak, but wow, I mean, super impressive kids all the way around. I really was blown away by William Sanders the other day. I mean, I feel like maybe we've made a more concerted effort. Yes, you want to get the most talented kids you could possibly get. At the same time, you would like to get kids that seem teachable. They seem educated, therefore they have to be teachable, and they're articulate And I mean, they just were so good in front of the microphone, and that's so crucial for your brand now, because now you're in front of the microphone more than ever. I think back in the day, people with the various jokes and things about athletes and academics, they weren't in front of the mic as often. But now you're in front of the mic very, very often. So you don't want to be a bad speaker.
Social media has changed it all.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching. I'll watch every commitment video now with the job at BOL. I mean, I used to watch most of them, but now with the BOL job, I watch all of them. And what I'm struck all the time is half the time what I'm watching is Instagram Live. They're committing live, speaking to their phones on Instagram Live, and that's something that just didn't even happen 3 and 5 years ago.
That's right.
Even though Instagram and stuff like that was around then, I'm just saying it's sort of a new thing that these kids aren't, like I was commenting yesterday. They don't go to their local TV station and commit anymore. It used to be they'd go to local TV. If you're a big name, you could go to your local ABC, NBC, CBS on the news, on the local sports and commit. But now it's, through On 3's YouTube page, 24/7 has a YouTube page, Rivals. But the kids often just commit on their own through Twitter or Instagram Live, Facebook Live. And I guess the kids are just more used to speaking publicly because they do so through their social media. And in terms of your complimenting Will Sanders and Jamie French, couldn't agree more, especially Sanders came across as a future captain of the football team, frankly. I thought, like, that guy might one day have his name on the sidewalk. He's captain material.
You know what I really want one day is for a kid to really buck the trend and commit longhand. Like he just mails a letter into a local TV station. Dear sir, what a long, strange path it's been.
Press release.
All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will be back tomorrow with more countdown stuff and some other stuff, I'm sure. So until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.